to go. But 60 Minutes is a training course where we meet once a month. Of course, over the past few months, we've been meeting virtually, but it's 60 minutes or less. It's quick training. Kevin Long did the first 4 months of the year, talked some nuts and bolts fundamentals of real estate. Larry Sanders is up now, who is talking more mindset, and then I'll come in the last 4 months of the year, talk a little more time management. Today, Larry will be discussing what we refer to as the Gladiator mindset. Talk to you guys about how to handle yourself in some high pressure, high stress situations, which once you get what I refer to as that dreaded word busy in real estate, things can get very stressful. Larry's going to talk a little bit about balance, that work-life balance. I think what you'll find, listening to Larry talk, it is virtually impossible to achieve 50-50 in terms of life-work balance. To me, what balance really means is being fully engaged in whatever it is you're doing, whether you're at home with your wife, your husband, your son, your daughter, with your parents, or with a coworker, or with a client. Being balanced is being fully engaged, and I know that Larry will hit on that. So with that, Larry, I will turn it over to you to get started with your presentation. I know before the end here, Larry will cap it off with a few action steps and give you guys the next date for the next 60 Minutes course. Larry, take it away, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Yeah, Ben's right. So when it comes to balance, there's no magic pill. There's really no perfect balance. So it's our quest for balance that we're really chasing. And I think that's probably the first thing to think about. But I wanted to recap the last chat, just in case anybody wasn't on there last time around. And the idea I would say is take some good notes today, because we're all so different. Each one of us is going to get something different out of this class. And without those notes, who knows if you'll take that with you in the long run. Overall, it'll be easy to catch up though. So let's start with the recap. The big topic was goals, right? But specifically it was finding your why. I don't really like the whole finding your why movement, just because I feel like it's really saturated now. So I call it finding your fuel. Fuel is needed when your tank gets a little low, and depending on how much fuel you have, it depends on how far you'll go. So for me, your why is your fuel. But we also discussed comparing yourselves to the right people, right? Like using the right metrics for you, your business, your goals. You want to make sure that you're doing a true apples and apples comparison. Otherwise, you may be using the wrong measurements. You might be a blooming success and not even realize it because you're measuring it the wrong way. And then the other thing, the action steps, right? So the action steps were to set goals both with milestones and deadlines, milestones being kind of sub goals, but not in every circle of life, right? Just the two areas of life that you had low grades. We said, hey, grade yourself A through F, and wherever you feel like you're lacking, pick those two areas, and let's focus on those two instead of focusing on every realm of life and trying to improve everything at one time. But the idea is that when you reach your goals, you want to celebrate. Very important to celebrate. It's also important to not get too caught up in the celebration, and then also immediately set more goals. Otherwise, you won't make the progress that you want to make. The last step was to find an accountability partner. Now, if you're new in the class, you didn't attend the last class, that's okay, don't worry. But after today's class, somebody that you're already tight with, somebody that you respect in the business, reach out to them, because without an accountability buddy, you just won't go as far. For example, Ben and Kevin hold me accountable pretty regularly, but what really holds me accountable is the level of respect that I have for those guys being willing to help me. So just keep that in mind. So jumping into today, this is kind of nerdy stuff, and I'm a self-proclaimed nerd. You know, it is what it is. But I grew up in a military family, and I grew up in an environment that was really high on discipline. Looking back, I didn't care for it too much, but I also credit it for a lot of the discipline that I have today. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is why I feel like I have a gladiator mindset, and what I feel like having a gladiator mindset equates to in real estate. So first things first, you know, growing up in a military family, my father was a drill sergeant, right? So a drill sergeant is what you think a drill sergeant would be. Low tolerance, very strict on systems and rules, and then also really deep conversations when you fall short. So accountability was big in my household. But I also, I wrestled. I wrestled in high school. I briefly wrestled in college, and I played rugby in college. And those two sports and the coaches that I had, that really, really taught me what it was to have a gladiator mindset. I remember my wrestling coach in high school telling us that, you know, we can practice and run and wrestle for 3-4 hours every day, but if we're mentally weak, we're not going to succeed, because at the end of the day, 99% of what we do in most cases is mental. You know, for wrestling, it was a lot less of the physical that we all thought it was, and it was more of having that strong mental mindset when you're looking your opponent in the eye, I guess. But, you know, real estate can kind of feel like a battle, right? Some days you have these days where you feel that nothing could go wrong, and there's not a battle or a war that you would lose, because things are just falling into place. But if your business is anything like mine, every day doesn't go like that. And those days where it feels like a battle, maybe one day's okay, maybe 2 days not too bad, but when you've been in a battle for 2 weeks, you sure hope to be battle tested. And I think that's where having that gladiator mindset comes in. So maybe you don't care for the arena gladiator mentality, maybe you do, but I love it because I think a gladiator needs training. I think they relish strategy, and I think overall they get pumped up over victories, right? Like losing is not attractive to a gladiator. So if you try to equate that into what we go through, while I hate losing, I still think that there's true value in losses. So just remember that losing the right way can bring you back stronger than ever. But to try to break it down, I wanted to recap a movie that probably everybody's seen, and I know it's a little meatheadish here to bring it up, but probably everyone has either seen or heard of the movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe, except Dane. Dane doesn't watch TV very much. And in Gladiator, Russell Crowe was a character they called Maximus, and he was such a good leader that the king wanted him to be the king when the king passed away. And the king's son, of course, didn't like that. I see you, Dane. The king's son, of course, didn't like that, came up with an elaborate plan to kill his father. And what he ended up doing was he thought he killed Russell Crowe, but essentially he put him into slavery. He killed Russell's wife and his son. And when all of that happened, things kind of got pretty thick. So he decided that regardless of the odds, he had one goal in mind, and that was to overthrow the new king and avenge his family. But how he did it, I think, is kind of where the gladiator mindset comes in. So regardless of the odds, his mindset, his preparation, and his why helped him emerge from every battle he ever had in the Colosseum. Ended up in their eyes being one of the best of all time. But the reason he was so successful is because he had obsessive persistence with his fuel, with his why. And that was to extract revenge, right? So he succeeds regardless of the odds. His wife, his son are his driving force. When they're taken from him, his wife becomes to avenge their death and overthrow leadership. But the big thing is that he loved his country and he loved his fellow soldiers. And in the end, he sacrificed himself for a greater good. So he as a gladiator, decided that it wasn't about him. It was about the greater good. It was about what was good for the people. The people are your clients. You're the gladiator. And it's really not about what's best for you. It's about what's best for them. Staying in the right frame of mind, not getting confrontational, little simple things can let your clients know that you're trying to be a gladiator for them. Clients that feel they have a gladiator in their corner, I promise you are going to keep that in mind when it comes time to maybe refer you business in the future, or God forbid they hear a terrible real estate story, because that does happen. So for you guys, I want to first say that this is opinion-based stuff, right? Like I was lucky enough to graduate from college, but I don't know about having a PhD in gladiator mindsets or anything silly like that. But I do know my opinion of what a gladiator mindset is. And I think the first thing they do is they understand that their job is to prepare for battle in the arena and that their job is never done. So they practice every day. They don't practice for a month, feel like they're good, and then kind of lay off practice for maybe 2 or 3 months to get back on it. It's always assumed that their opponent is doing the same. So any slacking on their part might actually give their opponent the victory. In real estate, who are our opponents? I don't really like the word opponent because I think you need to think of other realtors as frenemies, and maybe instead of opponents. But I would say the other realtors, the other side of the deal, or really anyone that prevents you from accomplishing your goals in real estate. That could mean fighting for your clients on a home inspection addendum when you're getting strong resistance from the other side. That can mean ramping up your negotiations in a multiple offer situation. It could be a number of different things. But the second part of it is our practice is daily training, but it's also retention. A lot of you are phenomenal about attending training, and I truly wish I was as good as you were, especially in the early years of my career. But what do we do to retain information knowing that we're all so different? I'm a old nerd notes taker, but I encourage you to have some method of retention. So that's the first nugget of today is, hey, attending training is great. There's not a speaker out there that's going to tell you to not attend training. But what are you doing to retain the information that you receive at training? If you don't have a quick answer, one that you feel confident about, that might be the first note to take today to try to improve as time goes on. And you'll get more out of your training that way. So what else about gladiators? They see value in their opponent, and they learn more from losses than wins. I'm going to jump lanes really quick here, and I'm going to use Michael Jordan as an example of that. So he's a perfect example. I consider him to be a gladiator on the basketball court, right? The crazy thing about Michael Jordan, and I just recently learned this, like his losses, especially losses in a championship, it would send him into a borderline obsessive mindset where winning next season is all he could think about, but he didn't just leave it there. He immediately went into action. He pulled his army in with him. He did everything he could to make them better. Probably one of the best basketball players of all time, you know? So really, really good example of what you can do when you're really willing to take it that far. And the question I ask about Michael Jordan and his teammates is, if he didn't push them, how would they have ever found out how far they could go? If they were reaching their potential on their own, they would have done that. But all of a sudden, with an extra push from a gladiator, they become even better versions of themselves. So just remember, sometimes it's good to have that accountability buddy, that mentor. But one thing it's not healthy to do, it's not healthy or productive to stay in the guilt loop. So let's talk real quick about what the guilt loop is. When you have a gladiator mindset, you're aware of situations where you have responsibility, but you are not burdened with guilt. In today's society, it seems like no matter what you do, you let somebody down, right? For me, it's hey, business is going great, but I'm very aware that I need to spend more time at home or with my extended family that I haven't seen in a while. So it's always kind of staring you in the face. But you know, talking about that guilt loop, naturally, y'all bear with me. My iPad just shut off, and I'm a notes nerd. Okay. So we as agents need to be humble. And first, you got to understand that everybody makes mistakes, right? So before you get into that guilt loop and you possibly never get out of it, first just say, hey, I take responsibility for what's happened. And then move on. Set up an action plan on how you're going to get where you need to be. the action, right? The action is what will take you out of the loop. But with no action, you have no choice but to stay in the loop. What I do personally is I'm a little high strung, and I tend to try to do things as fast as possible, which doesn't always equate into doing things as good as possible. So the first thing I have to do, and my first recommendation for you all, is to slow down, right? The world wants you to be busy, but what do you want? Do you want to be clear-headed? Do you want to have a gladiator mindset? Maybe you need to cut down on some of the noise and first just slow down.
Hey, Larry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Hey, guys, if you are not on mute, please mute your screen. I see Shannon is not on mute. Tommy just muted. Cole, if you can mute. Just a couple of people who aren't muted. Please mute your screen so we can hear Larry. Sorry about that, guys.
No, appreciate that. Thanks to Whitney, too. All right. Bear with me, guys. Okay. So first thing, slow down. Second, shift your perspective. You're in a negative mindset. You're in a guilty mindset. You have to do something to get you out of that mindset and get yourself into a positive mindset. I listened to a speaker a few weeks back. Garbage in, garbage out. Good in, good out. You know, what do you want to put in to get it out? So I say shift that mindset, get yourself in a positive frame of mind, and kind of go from there. And then remember, there is truly no such thing as a loss. If you lose a contract in a multiple offer situation, that's sure going to happen again in life sometime. So what good can we take from it? What lesson came from it? And then again, retention, right? So retain that lesson, you know, bury it so it's there when you need it, and dig it back up the next time you need to use it. Just continue that growth progress. Gladiators adapt or they don't survive, right? Like, it's kind of morbid, but if you don't adapt to the caliber of your opponent, you are probably going to be defeated into the arena. Again, how do you adapt? You have to train. But I want to use Michael Jordan as an example of that again. Early in his career, he actually had to completely adjust the way that he was used to playing the game so that he could involve his teammates more. He realized that they would accomplish their goal if he made that necessary sacrifice. And it wasn't something he wanted to do. It wasn't even something that he was used to. But once the results started coming, even he couldn't deny it. So try that. Remember that if you're unhappy with the way things are going right now, as my friend Dan Gibson says, nothing changes if nothing changes. So you have to adapt. You've got to be willing to climb higher, or you're not going to go any higher. I'll use a Spartacus analogy to kind of liken it the same way. You know, if the level of his training intensity didn't go up as the quality of his opponents did, he would have, the movie would have been, what, an hour instead of like 5 hours. But he was a leader in his army, but not refined and as well trained as the gladiators were when he joined them. So most often, we learn this the hard way as realtors, right? I'll use some analogies here. Our cuts in the arena, those are missed deadlines. Our bruises are missed commitments. Those hurt, and they hurt longer than a cut does. And our bumps are missed training opportunities, right? When you hear about that class and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have went there. Well, you'll never know what they talked about because you weren't able to make it there. So the actual pain is in knowing that we could have been prepared to win, but we lost because we fell short on the training and battle prep. And for somebody like me, man, I can't live with that. I can't live with knowing that there were things within my control and I really lost just because I didn't take that extra step. You may or may not be the same way. So moving on from the whole gladiator mindset, I wanted to talk about the difference between a hero and a guide. I heard a podcast and I've done a little bit of reading on it, and this story really resonated with me because, including myself, I think we as real estate agents, we're actually brainwashed to believe that we have to be heroes, right? I'll say be a champion instead of a hero, but even better than a champion, Be the guide. So what's the difference between a hero and a guide? First things first, like you never want to play the hero. You always want to play the guide. And according to Donald Miller, who's the CEO of StoryBrand, he says clients actually don't care about things like we sold 915 homes last year. We're the best. We're among the best. Any of those, what he calls hero statements. He says they actually make us look weak because the hero is actually the second weakest hero in a story, second only to the victim, which is crazy to me. But why? A hero is ill-equipped. They most often are nervous if they can get the job done or not, and they truly are in desperate need of help. Now, I'll give you some illustrations of this in a minute. When you play the part of the hero, you remove yourself from your client's story. You want them to be involved in your story, but without words, you're telling them that you don't care anything about their story at all. So if they are the hero of their story and you're the hero of yours, the problem is that you two are reading two different stories. In contrast, though, a guide plans to help others solve problems. So think about movies, right? A character shows up during the movie. Good examples, I'll probably date myself here, but Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid, that's a guide, right? Like Daniel-san, that's the hero, but let's be real. Mr. Miyagi was the guide. Getting a little nerdy, Frodo, Lord of the Rings, right? Super nervous, literally, like the whole time. But he had his crew and he had old Gandalf. And Gandalf was definitely the guide. Katniss in the Hunger Games, we'll be a little more modern here. She had Woody Harrelson, right? He didn't always tell her what she wanted to hear the way she wanted to hear it, but he had the experience that she needed to know what was going on. Most of the time, a guide is more experienced and level-headed than the hero is. And it's because their training and experience gives them the mental clarity to solve problems effectively. So a lot of the wrong people in society have the microphone today. Let's talk about like social media heroes, right? A lot of social media and traditional media heroes. But they push their personal agendas, they push their group agendas. Most of their messages aren't really clear. And so neither is our focus on what they're talking about. So there's debate, there's two sides to every story, and there's no shortage of armchair quarterbacks now. But some of these people are labeled as heroes despite the fact that they never take action on anything. And that's kind of crazy to me. So who are the guides then, right? In real estate, we're the guides. So what if we shifted our mindsets to expect issues, to expect these things that continue to come up in our deals that frustrate us so much, so that we can shift our mindsets, so we can put systems in place that will eventually make us premier guides for our clients instead of heroes. I think the first thing you need to do is you need to know your client. You need to know their goals, their stories. You need to know so much about them that you could almost tell them so much about themselves that they would be like, wow, you know a lot about me. Like, I care about you. I literally have just been listening to the things that you're telling me. And sure, you share some of your story, share your boundaries with them, share your situation, right? So you're letting them know that what they need and their story is the most important part, but that you also write a few pages in the books too. Kind of setting expectations with them. That way, when something happens, you can refer back to it if you need to do it. But the big idea is that doing it will lower barriers. And it's a key ingredient to effective problem solving with a client down the road. You're trying to solve problems for tomorrow, not be reactive and solve the problems of today. So let's do some scenario training real quick here. Tips for real estate agents in common situations. The first is do not overreact. I promise you that if you do, your client will too. The second is don't speculate on what will happen. Let them know what may or may not happen based on your experience, right? But if you don't have the experience, how can you speculate? So my advice there is don't speculate one way or another. Find your guide. If you're not on a team, talk to your sales manager. Talk to a veteran agent around your office that has time to help, but that you also respect. And they'll help you with what you need so that there's no tension being raised unnecessarily. Each of these involves being uncomfortable, vulnerable, and developing a talent for asking strategic questions. But the answers to the questions from the client will act as a springboard to refer back to if things come up down the road. Another tip on scenario training. The question is, can you do it now? If the answer is yes, do it now. We all have an endless list of stuff to do, right? We all have precious little time. These are very common problems now. But I can tell you that sweeping issues under the rug or putting them off, that can really escalate problems. And that can get more people involved than necessary, ultimately impacting your reputation in the industry, whether that be with a closer or a lender or God forbid, another realtor in the business. So I'm going to rapid fire some stuff to help you with scenario training with buyers and sellers. First things first with buyers. You need to do an initial consult over the phone. And the goal of that consult is to gather information. I don't know if you'll be able to write this down fast enough, but we've got this recorded so you'll be able to refer back to it. But anything that could identify the opportunity knowing that time is precious. Are they working with other agents? What's their current living situation? Have they purchased before? What's their preferred monthly payment? Have they spoken with a lender yet? The answers help you design an organized in-person consult, and then you know if you have a real opportunity in front of you. You need to identify the opportunities and you need to do it quickly. Otherwise, you may be wasting the most precious asset you have, your time. And that's frustrating. At the consult, go over the entire process in a shortened version. Treat it like a showing. In my opinion, during a showing, more time is spent in the most important parts or rooms of the house. So there's less time spent in closets or in the attic, more time spent in the kitchen and the master suite type of setup. But you have to spend time on each part of the buying process or you'll get bit down the road. If you go over it initially, you can refer back, even if it's a soft conversation like, hey, you may have forgotten, but remember when we tackled this at that buyer consult, you may want to check your buyer packet for that information just to refresh your memory. But if you never did it, you're constantly in reaction mode. Set up their search right then and there so that you can make adjustments right then and there. That'll save you time in the future. And discuss out-of-pocket expenses with them at that consult. How would you like to buy a house and not know that you were going to have out-of-pocket expenses? I wouldn't care for that too much, but I know that people do it and they act really surprised when the time comes. At the consult and at the beginning of the inspection, set expectations. They don't know, right? But you do. So maybe they have done 2 home inspections in their life. That's awesome. How many have you done though? Probably a lot more than 2, and your experience trumps all here. So let them know about the time frames, the deadlines ahead of time, and then let them know about the items that are not uncommon. Heck, tell them about them up front, and then if it doesn't happen to them, they're happy. If it does happen, at least they expected it. My advice to you is to take their fear away. Let them know that you'll send them the report, the repair request, and your suggestions all at one time. Please do not send them the full report just because you got it in your email and you want to be a hero to do something for your client. If you do that and you send no advice, no repair request, your client's immediately going to think that they need to do everything on that list. Your phone's going to ring immediately. So get ahead of it, right? I'm getting ahead of myself. Last piece of advice, next to last piece with buyers, over communicate. It's my personal opinion, but I think that agents should speak with their buyers at least 3 times per week. More obviously if they're hot to try. You're looking at houses every day. You need to tell them what's been done, what's currently happening, and what's coming up. This cuts down on incoming calls. It solidifies your competency in the eyes of the client, and it gives them a reason to refer you business in the future. Isn't that powerful stuff, right? Like when they say that their agent checks in with them 3 times a week and the other person says they haven't heard from their agent in 45 days because they've been counting. That's strong stuff, and you separate yourself. The last thing is, I love the phrase, guys, we got this. Like I'm like a Jackie Moon from Semi-Pro guy. I'm a big motivator guy. I don't have extensive knowledge in any realm of life, and I admit that. But guys, we got this. I've seen home inspections significantly worse than this. Guys, yeah, we're in a competitive situation with 5 other offers right now, but this is why you hired me. We've got experience, and this is just kind of how the market is right now. But don't worry, I got your back. You'd be surprised how much that'll resonate with them because they're scared, they're nervous. And don't downplay what they're going through just because you go through it regularly. You're the eye of the hurricane. So whether it's appraisal, inspection, loan issues, whatever, the storm's all around you. But as the eye of the hurricane, you can monitor it all while staying calm and staying in a professional state of mind. I think that's what helps us, categorize ourselves in that top 1% as realtors. And I'm trying to go as fast as possible because I want us to have good Q&A, but I want to, get this meat out there too. So that's some good tips on the buyer side. Hopefully you guys got 1 or 2 tips out of that. On the seller side, the same process overall. The first interview takes place over the phone. Common questions there. What do they owe? When do they want to sell? What do they think their home is worth based on conversations with neighbors, friends, and family? I'll ask a seller that question up to 4 times because the first time they typically don't want to answer it. But let's be real. They've been talking. I can't be the first person they've talked to about selling their home, right? It just doesn't work that way. Put yourself in their shoes. You would probably be talking with more people than the realtor too. Where are they headed next? Why, right? What's your story? This lowers the barrier. It gives you the information you need to make sure it's a worthwhile opportunity. You'll know if the house is going to sell. You'll know how quickly. You'll know everything you need to know when you set foot in the house for the actual listing presentation. When you get there, explain how your business works and be prepared to conquer emotion with logic when it comes to discussing list price. Discuss the numbers, but also treat the house like it's their home because at that point it still is. It hadn't become a tangible asset yet. Do a walkthrough. Help them get organized and put their best foot forward, and then discuss the key points like the appraisal, the inspection, but above all, finish by asking them what their fears are. What if you could address somebody's fears and they told you everything you needed to do? All you need to do is show up. I love it. Again, over communicate. On the seller side, an example, I talk to my sellers once or twice a week, no matter what. Now I am spoiled. I've got Whitney Kantawi, who is a phenomenal transaction coordinator. She's talking to most of our clients on a daily basis. But no matter what, every client I have knows that they're going to hear from me at least once, probably twice a week, just as an overall check-in and to see how they're doing. Do it the same day and the same time each week. So it really freaks them out. But above all, they're flattered, right? Because they're being treated as a priority. The last thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to skip a section, but the last thing I'm going to talk about, and then we can do some Q&A hopefully, is what I call limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs, this is a growing epidemic in society right now, and I hear it all the time, and it drives me crazy. I grew up in a single income family in Petersburg, Virginia. We were middle class by very poor standards, I guess, right? Like we had food to eat, a place to live and stuff, but not much more than that. But one thing my father would never let me have, same thing with my stepmom, is limiting beliefs. I would come home pretty beat up from whatever happened in the course of a day, and they would sit me down and say, hey, wherever you're going to go, you're going to have to take yourself there. And if you feel this way about yourself, man, it's going to be tough to get there. So I wanted to talk to you about what I feel limiting beliefs are. and how they affected me. So limiting beliefs sabotage the first half, not first year or first few weeks, the first half of my real estate career. And I've been doing it 13 years now. Being vulnerable with you guys, right? Like, I thought I wasn't as good as others. I didn't know enough people. I even thought I was from the wrong area. I thought because of where I came from, it was going to take so long for me to build this book of business that I couldn't be successful. I was embarrassed by my shortcomings. I was embarrassed by my lack of knowledge, and I chose to hide. It didn't cripple my success, but it significantly hindered it. In the first 6 years I was in real estate, I never sold more than 12 houses in a year. And that's a pretty lofty number considering what I sold most of those years. One of those years, I sold that many houses. But it wasn't until, and I adopted this from Ben. I didn't even realize what it was at the time, but it wasn't until I took a locked-in approach and took responsibility for what was and wasn't happening that I started seeing success. And now I run a business 90% by referral and generate enough business to share with my team, kind of have this work family surrounding me in addition to my regular family, which I'm so grateful for. The team believes in my mission. They deliver service to my longtime clients who have come to expect a certain level of service. And all that stuff, man, that's so great. But I want to tell you, like, I'm not special. I'm very, very ordinary. And don't get mad, right? But you guys probably are too, right? We love to think that we're a little more special than we are, but we're all very ordinary people trying to do extraordinary things. So what are you trying to do that's extraordinary? And the good news is that we've all got plenty of room to grow, right? This is what I want you to do. This is the most powerful thing I have for you today. I want you to eliminate these phrases. I want you to eliminate these words from your mindset. I need to. Anybody ever said that? Man, I really need to do so-and-so more, right? Why are you talking about it? When are you going to do it? What's your action plan? I should do that. I could do that. I wish I did so-and-so more or less. Or my favorite, when this happens, I'm going to do this. Those are limiting beliefs. You're telling yourself that at this hour, at this minute, you're not good enough. You're already good enough, but you're not good enough if you don't take action, and nothing's going to happen if you don't take action. So instead of using those phrases, instead of having those limiting beliefs, I want you to think, can I do anything about this problem right now? And then go gladiator status and do it. I have no better advice for you than that. That's what you got to do. You have a full tool belt and a solid instruction guide. The tools need to be used, and the instruction guide has to be read every day or every time you have a new project, right? I believe in each and every one of you, the same way I believe in my team, my family, the same way I believe in Hometown Realty as a firm overall. And hell, I'll say it for you. If I can do it, you can do it. I truly believe that. Hopefully you guys, got 3 or 4 things out of today's class that you can take with you. But I want you to reflect on this stuff weekly. I want you to find an accountability partner, preferably today. And I know these seem like demands, but guys, I want to get you rocking, and there's no tomorrow, so you may as well start today. We're going to open it up for some questions at this point. And then after that, I'll cover what we're going to talk about next go around and all that good stuff. Don't be shy. Benjamin.
Thanks, Larry. I appreciate it. You talk about the gladiator mindset, and I think a lot of times when you're talking about trying to deal with high stress or high pressure situations, this gladiator mindset will come into play when you're reacting to something. Something goes wrong, inspection goes bad, low appraisal, whatever it is as it relates to real estate. And I think a lot of times you can get ahead of that just by being simply proactive, right? And so I think the Gladiator mindset a lot of times applies more to being proactive than it does reactive. We all know that communication is very, very important. And I think that a lot of times a reactive communicator will only communicate when something is needed, where a proactive communicator will communicate just because you know that's your job and that's what you're supposed to do. With all that said, you hit on a little bit touching base with sellers and buyers and about calling them at the same time or the same day. What does your schedule look like in terms of proactive communication? Because I do believe that that is something that goes along with the Gladiator mindset that a lot of people don't do in our industry.
So for me, I've got to do it. I have to do mine around the same time each week because the ebbs and flows of the week, I want to make these calls when I'm in the best mindset. So when it comes to any of my buyer and sellers, I make those calls on Thursdays because as a team, we have a big pipeline meeting every Thursday. So, same for you guys. I've got fresh information to relay to my clients, even if that information's, hey, same song, second verse as last week. But I've noticed that telling them that up front, Benjamin, has really impressed them. The number one complaint they have about us guys is that we're poor communicators. The number two complaint is probably that we're even worse communicators when we have bad news or something tough to tackle. So if you let them know, good, bad, or in between, I'm going to be calling you these days, these times, it immediately puts you in a whole nother category in terms of your competition.
So Larry, I wanted to jump in there because I do that too, but I have chosen a different day. Specifically, probably more for the spring market is when I started it, but I started a few years ago. I do feedback Monday afternoons. And so what I do is I recap what was listed last Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or over the weekend. And then Monday afternoon versus Monday morning gives me a chance to get all the feedback from agents that maybe didn't give feedback over the weekend. And I can't tell you how much that sets us apart from other agents. So if you're showing property, take the time to give feedback because it really does matter and it reflects on us as a whole. But when I tell them I will be letting you know Monday afternoon, then they stop texting and bugging me all weekend when I'm supposed to be showing properties, negotiating contracts, or spending time with my family.
It's strong. Guys, they're testing us. They're not testing us with like deceit in their heart or anything crazy like that. But they're always testing our competency and our reliability. So when you promise and deliver over and over again, you really solidify a reputation with them where they're going to be happy to refer you. And like Shannon's saying, when they can describe your business so specifically, conversations take place out there. They're talking to other people. They're talking to their friends, family, coworkers who are having situations in real estate. If you've got a solid story like Shannon's, who's going to get those referrals, right? The one that communicates effectively. The long and short of it, though, whether it's a Thursday, a Monday, if it's not there, guys, it needs to be there. If you're not running a schedule, and that's Benjamin's realm, he's going to take y'all deep into that stuff. But that is one thing I would say, put on your schedule each week because your clients need to hear from you.
Hey, Larry, I have a quick question. So I actually have a client right now that, I set up a meeting with her. I went over the expectations. And one of the things I'm noticing is she's having a difficult time, like, communicating back to, like, the lender. And she'll say she's going to call and she doesn't. How do I get her back on track to communicate effectively? Like, I've talked to her a couple times, letting her know, like, how important it is to make sure that everything is communicated in a timely manner. I stay on top of her to make sure she's communicated with them. But now it's kind of gotten to a point, like for example, she was supposed to have a call with him at 11 today. And he called me at 11:15 saying she still hadn't called. And then I texted her, I tried to call her and was like, hey, just checking to see if you had an opportunity to talk to him. Well, she didn't call me back, but she texted me and said, I've already talked to him, ? So I just don't want her to feel like I'm attacking her, but so I'm just not sure what to do about that.
We would probably ask
I
5 of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say try to clue in either a group text with you and the lender and the client, or an email. That way everyone's on the same page. There's not any more he said, she said. Maybe it's a conference call. I mean, find a way to get all 3 parties on the phone at the same time. That way there's no miscommunication. You know exactly what was said between the lender and the client. Obviously, there needs to be a time we need to jump off for, financial reasons, or they don't want to know, all their business, jump out. But I think, getting in contact where everyone's in the same loop is going to help out a lot with that.
I was going to say the same thing, Jessica. The team that you have working, you want to kind of come together and get fluid conversation going. I don't want to say to put some pressure on her, but just to let her know that y'all are communicating. You do actually know what really is going on. And then the lesson to take from here, you might already know this. So if you do, I love you, and there's no lesson to take from it. But the lesson here is I always try to find out what my client's why is, or whatever. What is it that when they start slacking, I can remind them of to bring them back to where they need to be so they get back to what they're supposed to be doing. There's something in there that's making her want to move. You do or you don't know. It's okay either way. But having that piece of information is like, hey, look, you hired me to do this. I care about it because you care about it, but I can't help you get there if we don't do X, right? Talk to the lender. It's always a good start.
Okay.
It also can help you if you try to back up the schedule. So a lot of times I'll reverse the timeline. So I might say something like this. Okay, so just so you know, we're closing on the 30th, right? Just for example. On the 27th, that means that your closing disclosure has to go out, or you can't close on the 30th. That means that 3 business days before that, you have to have cleared underwriting. 3 days before that, they had to have had all of the final documents that they've asked you for after you cleared the initial underwriting. If we aren't hitting those time frames, even though we have 10 days or 14 days left to closing, we're going to miss our closing. If we go past the 30th, what's that going to do to your moving schedule? Are you still going to have somebody available to help you move? And I know if we don't hit the 30th, if we go on to the 2nd, your payment will go up approximately $700. I really don't want that to happen to you. So how can I help?
Okay, yeah, I definitely give her the timelines of everything. I'm worried. We just started out, like we have the home inspection on Friday. So I'm just worried as time goes on, I want to try to nip this in the bud now. So when we're getting closer to the closing date, they start to ask for a lot of documents, and, I just want to make sure she's understanding how important it is. So hopefully all this information could definitely help.
Well, and you'll get so much better. You'll get better at being sweet and kind and forceful as you go on. And I think
that's definitely my problem. I'm trying to be too nice. I need to be a little bit more stern, I think.
Well, I really lay it out for them. I'm like, you have 7 days to formally apply for your loan. If you do not formally apply for your loan, whatever that means that your lender needs, documents, signings, whatever, then you are in violation of the contract. And if the loan doesn't close on time or has a problem, then you're not going to have that as a contingency. And then when you put in the 14 days for the home inspection, I always tell them, you have to have your list to me by the end of the 12th day. I have to have it on day 12. I don't care if it says 14 in the contract. I have to have it because I've got to be able to turn it and present a document and everything. So I just back up everything, give myself that little cushion so that they can't push you up against the wall. It's a horrible feeling to be like on a Saturday night on day 14, it's 4:30. You have 30 minutes to get a document over to meet your home inspection deadline, and they have put you in a bad position.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys.
Absolutely. Keep on keeping on.
You got to make sure, Jessica, that like when you say yes to something, you got to know what you're saying no to as well. And sometimes you say yes to a client, you're saying no to your family, your schedule, so many other things that are important too.
Larry, why don't you try to take one more question, then give quick action steps, and then tell us next class. We're about 6 minutes away from 1 o'clock.
Any more questions, guys? Good stuff. All right. So action steps from here. If you don't have an accountability partner today, go find one. And please don't take that lightly. I know we shrug off this stuff. I am included in that group. But I can take it from me. The level of respect I have for Ben and Kevin helps me be a better agent, helps me be a better dude in general. Those guys will probably say the same thing. So you have your accountability partner. You know the two circles of life that you're struggling in the most. You have goals revolving around those with deadlines. The next step is to write down any phrases that you currently use that you consider limiting beliefs, right? If you're a I need to person, just write it down. Take those, I need you to remind yourself that you do it at the office, at home. I need you to have it in the places that you're the most active so that you remind yourself that first, you're not a bad person, but second, that you want to change, right? So any limiting beliefs, any phrases that you see yourself writing down, keep those in your mind. And then I want you to start writing down ways to shift your mindset, right? I'll use this for a perfect example. I need to get out to a neighborhood to look at some progress, right? What I need to do is jump in my car, ride to the neighborhood and look at the progress, right? So jump in the car, go to the neighborhood and look at the progress. Stop talking about it. That's a perfect analogy, and it's a way to let you know I'm human too, and I flounder all the time. The other is to find a mentor, right? If you're not on a team, this isn't a team recruiting thing, but if you're not on a team, you have to have a mentor of some kind. And like, I love Rodney, Shannon, Cindy, I love all the sales managers. They're killer, but they're not necessarily your mentor because they've got a lot going on too. You need somebody that you get really, really, really tight with over time. Accountability buddy kind of slaps you around when you need it, pumps you up when you need it. But a mentor's been there. A mentor, they know what to tell you, and they're not going to solve all your problems for you. They're probably going to walk you through it. If you do those things, you'll be ready for the next class. Next class, July the 22nd at noon, as always, until 1. We're going to talk about systems and structure. We're going to dig more into that being the eye of the hurricane versus the hurricane itself. We're going to talk about how checklists actually create good habits. I'm going to talk to you about some systems to kind of cut out the guesswork and the stress of your business. And then I'm actually going to have, maybe for 5 minutes or so, I'm going to have a testimonial from one of the agents on my team on where their business was, maybe pre-systems, pre-accountability, and how the systems and structure had impacted their life. I think it might be good for you guys to hear it from somebody else other than little old me. And we're at 12:57, so we got 3 minutes to kill, y'all. Anybody got anything else? Any feedback?
Yeah, actually, Larry. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Hope you all are having a great day. So just sitting here listening to all of this information, and I'm hearing expectation management all over the place. You have to manage the expectations of yourself and your goals and your beliefs, but also the expectations. You have to manage the expectations that you have for your clients and your customers and your family. And just a little bit of maybe a note to Jessica is maybe let your client know that you expect these things to be done, not just follow up and say, hey, I'm just checking to see if, no, hey, these are the expectations of of what I'm trying to help you do, and help her manage those by just giving her maybe a to-do list, like you said, a checklist, and just have her maybe check those boxes.
Yeah, our philosophy has always been, whether they bought one house or 100 houses, treat them like they've never done it before and tell them that that's exactly what you're doing, right? Like, hey, we treat every client the same. Every client's important. And you might even feel like I'm treating you like this is the first house you've ever bought. If that's the case, I'm doing it the right way, but we don't want to miss any details. So we are going to treat you as if it's the first rodeo. Anybody else? All right, friends. Well, I appreciate it. Tell your accountability partner, let's blow it up bigger next time. Golf claps. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing y'all on the 22nd at noon. Thank y'all for coming in today.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Have a good
Yes.